it's a lot of new information. Ni får gärna ställa frågor på svenska, så hjälper vi till att ställa dem på engelska.
If I understood it correctly, you have to have a flare-up to be able to go, right?
Yes, exactly. And a flare-up involving arms, legs, hips, but not jaws, not cervical region, not back, and not abdomen and thoracic to date.
Why not?
It's maybe Michael will better than me answer to this question, but it's the first step, and it's to evaluate. All the problem is to evaluate the tolerance, safety, but efficacy, and the efficacy is measured by imaging, MRI, X-ray, CT, and it's better seen on appendicular regions than in a truncal region. I don't know if you...
Earliest time you think that medicine can be out in market?
I mean, that's going to depend on how the study goes. It's, you know, it's...
Say it's going really good.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think, Eric, there's no... At this point. It's...
10, 20 years?
Thank you for the question. We would be very prudent and careful to evaluate things as they proceed, and so we are not in a position to answer that question now.
And if you should just guess?
Yes? I'm sorry?
If you should just guess?
Oh no, guessing is not how we do our work. So we're taking it one step at a time. We just got a major milestone, which Michael and Geneviève spoke to, and that was the first cohort was finished. The Drug Monitoring Committee had reviewed the data and had indicated that the study is able to proceed as planned. And that's very significant. Now we're enrolling patients in the second cohort of the study. And one of the reasons why Geneviève is here is actually to talk to all of you so that she, as the principal investigator in Paris, can address any questions that you might have, because Paris is the site in Europe that's conducting this trial. So please, let's use advantage of that time. Yeah.
And after phase 2, is it a phase 3 study? Phase 4, 5?
So after phase 2, it's phase 3. And on the pyramid that I showed, there was something that I didn't talk about, which was at the top. It was called post-approval. Oh.
So if...
Anyway, so sometimes agencies, once the drug's approved, will also ask you to do what's called a phase 4, which is basically to look at different things, long-term safety as an example, or we don't know if that will be the case for us, but sometimes that happens. So that's what phase 4 is basically after the approval.
And the phase 3, is that going to be approximately the same thing as phase 2, which is taking 1 year?
The timing of phase 3, it's difficult to say at this point, because it's going to depend on, you know, the measurements we're doing in phase 2. Which ones are we going to be implementing in phase 3? How many patients exactly are we going to need in order to do our phase 3 studies, which will depend on which measurements we're going to be doing statistically. So I couldn't say at this point that it would be the same as the phase 2 timing.
Några fler frågor? We take it this one.
when a flare-up occur and the patient has to come to Paris, does that mean the patient will stay there for 42 days? And will the patient stay at the hospital and so on?
Just for
Yes, that's a very important question, how it is working. So yes, usually the patients or the family call us and we organize the next day or 2 days after the visit in Paris. So only 2.5 hours by plane and then the changement. So it's not so far from Sweden. And then in our hospital we have a family hotel. Depending of the available rooms, or they are going in this hospital, hotel within the hospital, which is a very nice hotel, and it's really easy. But usually it's difficult to have a room for this first visit, the screening visit, right? Because it's 2 days in Paris. So we have organization, a convention with some hotels just in the streets, comfortable and easier than others, to be able to welcome the patients and the family. You see, so usually they come 2 days, or 1 or 2 days after the discussion by phone. Sometimes we discuss also with the physician to be sure of the flare-up. We exchange by email, and the family, the patient and his or her caregiver, they come to us. They stay 2 days, and then we have in the follow-up period some visits. Some visits are at home, and we have in some countries the nurse organization who is able to go at home to do the visit, but some visits they have to come back in our site. But it's usually easily done, and they know us, they know the hospital, and because we can organize these visits, the follow-up visit, they can stay in the hotel within the hospital, into the hospital.
Sorry.
And all the transportation, all the logistic is ensured and really well done by the travel agency organization.
I have another question. You say if you go to Paris, we need to be there for the first tests for
the screening. The screening.
Is it 1 day, 2 days?
2 days.
2 days.
It's 2 days, but 2 days, not full days. It's not full days. It's morning, because it depends of the imaging rendezvous. We have to do the X-ray, CT, MRI, examination, the questionnaire, the goniometry with a physiotherapist. So, and we are doing that quietly and slowly, no stress. So it's better to do it in 2 days. Probably we could do it in 1 day, but we prefer to do it in 2 days. Surely.
Yeah, and then the patient can go back home to Sweden.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, if they like, or they can stay.
They can stay.
They can stay for the whole period if they.
So,
or
yes, it's possible. For example, for people coming from quite far away, to stay in the town, in the hotel. Because the next visit is at day 14, which is quite close. But usually people have their business, their affairs. So, but it's possible, thanks to Clementia.
But the second is on day 14.
Day 14,
and then it's a third visit.
Yes.
In the end.
So once again, some of the visits are at home. And I don't know exactly in Sweden if the nurse agency has got some network here in your country. I have to check that. But if there is the nurse organization in Sweden, some visit where is possible at home, and but it's at day, donc it's at 2 weeks, so day 14, day 28, and then at the end, so day 42, and then at the end, so day, at 3 months. And it's sure that, for example, for the blood sample and for some visits, we prefer to do it properly. That's why we prefer to, depending of where the patient lives, if there is no nurse, for example, just living near the patient, it's often better to come to Paris than to do the things not properly at home. So each case we discuss.
Yeah. So it can be
we try to do the best for the patient and for the organization.
But maximum, is it 3 times they really need to be in Paris, or 2?
No, 4.
4.
Yes.
Good. We have one question over here.
Oops. I heard that you will include kids later this year, or was it next year? And can you tell me more about that?
So we're completing this EMA Pediatric Investigational Plan process. That'll be this year, and we're also going to meet with FDA. So it's probably best to see, meet with the agency, which will happen shortly, and then to see what their feedback is and so forth. And then I think our goal is to try and be able to include pediatric patients this year. The timing exactly will depend on how the meetings go, but that's our goal.
What?
When they start to test, the children, is that also in the phase 2, or will that be in phase 3?
So to be able to include the kids in this year, then that would mean that it would be in the phase 2 study that's ongoing. It'll all depend on how the agency's feedback to us, but I think that would be the best outcome would be to be able to include the kids in this cohort 2 of the study.
Will that also be in Paris?
Do you want to? Yeah. No. So I think right now we have our 3 clinical sites, and the intent is to continue with those 3 sites, and we'll look into whether there could be other sites to help out. But I think the intent is that in France also, that's where you would be able to go. For
one was Paris, one was Pennsylvania, and the third was
in California.
And when you talk about the age of the children, I heard it between 8 and 15 years of age. Is that not under 8 years in the next?
So again, it'll depend on what the agencies say to us. So it's tough to say, but I think it would. Our intent is to try to treat as much as possible.
So
our intent is try to treat as lower an age as possible, but we also realize that there are certain regulatory agencies that may not, allow you to go younger, or may ask you to go down to a certain age. So it's difficult to say what they will say when we meet with them.
So if we are lucky, there can be very young children in the next step. That's great.
Yeah. So and I think it comes down to the timing. So again, maybe for the cohort 2, maybe it'll go down to a certain age, and then if the agency allows, and then for phase 3, then the idea would be then to be able to go even younger. So that might be a scenario as well.
Thank you, Michael. If you look on our website, clementiapharma.com, our chief executive, Clarissa Desjardins, has written a letter. And to quote, she says, "Because FOP often affects children, Clementia is working to determine if palovarotene can eliminate abnormal bone growth in children and allow them to maintain a normal quality of life. With this goal in mind, Clementia is working to expand the palovarotene clinical development program to include FOP patients younger than 15 years old. Our goal is to enroll children 8 years of age and older into our clinical program sometime this year." So that's where you saw the 8 to 15. It was from Clarissa's letter, which is posted on our website. Yeah?
I guess it will be the same. And even the children, for the children, is the same. They have to have a certain weight and a flare-up and so on.
It's a bit early to answer exactly, I think. It's maybe a bit early to tell you more because we are waiting. But maybe you have more information.
So as I mentioned, we're doing pharmacokinetics. So we take a blood sample to look at the levels of palovarotene in the blood of the patients that are in this phase 2 study. And this will help us as well to try and see what are the doses we would need to give to the children in order to keep the similar exposure as in adults. And so it's, like Geneviève says, it's a little bit early to say, but
Let's see.
Yeah.
The way we see, I'm the physician just in the side, but the way this trial is organized by Clementia is really with safety at first and very a careful way, you see, so we can trust, I think.
I think it must be difficult to say also because when it starts in children, it often starts in the back. And the trials today are not included the back in adults. And so there might be differences when you come to the children, I think.
And I think that's why the pediatric process in Europe is also important, because a child is not just a small adult. There are a lot of considerations, so the agencies are helpful with that evaluation as well. There's a lot of different considerations for kids.
May I just add something very important? If in case of inclusion, anyway, of inclusion discussion, the classical treatment by prednisone has to be done as usual. It's important to do anyway, even between the discussion, trial or not trial, to start the classical treatment by prednisone as if no trial was discussed. It's really important.
I can take that in Swedish så alla hänger med. Om man får en flare-up och kontaktar Paris och ska vara med i testerna, så får man i alla fall sätta igång med prednison, med den medicinen som man använder idag. Så det är ingen skillnad om man får en flare-up, att du riskerar egentligen ingenting med tanke på att du kan fortsätta som du alltid har gjort tidigare. Så inom 24 timmar starta med kortisonet precis som man skulle ha gjort annars. Och det tar man samtidigt som man är med i testerna. Det tycker jag är väldigt skönt, som gör att det känns lite tryggt att man utsätter sig inte för någonting den här vågskålen. Man behöver inte bestämma A eller B, utan det är bara att köra på som vanligt.
Thank you, Mary. And something else also important is the weight. The minimum weight asked for this trial is 40 kilos.
40 kilo. Man får inte väga mindre än 40 kilo. Du får äta upp dig igen, Sofie. Bra. Och Gittan då? Väger du över 40 kilo? Snyggt. Yeah. We're discussing the weight. Ann-Sophie, she's 41 kilo, and Birgitta, she's 43 kilos. So, but they're not having so much movement. I think, Gittan, you have... har du lite rörlighet i ena armen fortfarande? Yes. Ann-Sophie? It's only the wrists.
This medicine, it's hoped to prevent more bone to start growing, but it's not taking away anything already grown, I guess.
So that we don't know but the studies are designed to try to treat at the time of a flare-up. Preventing any new bone from forming. Yeah.
But when you tested it on the mice, what happened to them?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so the mice, is a mouse model where you basically cause the injury. So the mouse, before doing that, the mouse does not have its a background of bone formation. It's basically you create the injury and bone is formed at that site of injury. And so with palovarotene, it's can you prevent that bone from forming after you've done the injury? So it's not addressing the same question as you had asked. Yeah.
If you take the bone away with surgery, what happened with the medication?
So we haven't looked at how palovarotene works in that case. What we do know is that quite often bone will reform if you do nothing after the surgery. So that is something that we can look at in the future, but we don't have any data at this point to be able to tell you whether it would prevent that bone from coming. Yeah, it's the mechanism action of the drug is such that perhaps it would, but we just don't know at this point.
I get a feeling that these trials need to be done first to be able to go to the next step and do trials on surgeries, since we know we have patients who want to remove bone formations. Some people just have a tiny bone that lock the whole hip, and it can be a bone just like 2 centimeters, and you can't move the hip. And maybe that can be someone who really wants to remove that little bone and want to participate in the future trials. But that's nothing yet, but hopefully I guess it will come.
Yeah. This phase 2 study is extremely important to be able to potentially address other questions. And we really need to try to get as many answers as we can from this study in the most straightforward way before looking at other potential. But it's a very good point about whether, you know, surgical release with palovarotene would prevent bone from coming back. But you're right. This study is our key study for this for those cases.
What was Roche using the medicine for in the beginning?
So it was for COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder.
It's a type of emphysema.
Lungefysem, kol. Inte kol, nej.
So the reason why they stopped in phase 2 is for that particular condition. It did not work for them. Yeah.
Känner vi oss nöjda med frågor? Det är ett litet tag kvar till kaffe. It's a little bit time left for until we have a coffee served. I think it's really nice if we just stand up, mingle around, talk in person, take the chance to say hello, and then we take coffee and meet back here at 3 o'clock. So now we have almost an hour to just mingle and talk, and it feels really nice.